110 million displaced and refugees. This is vastly higher than what we saw the year before. We function with voluntary contributions of governments and non-government entities, private sector, citizens. Those contributions have actually gone up every year. This is the first year where most likely, the year is not over, so there's still hope, but most likely the contribution will decline. When I went before the Sudan war to Chad, I could see that those refugees that had been there for 20 years were in a miserable condition. And so were the Chadians hosting them. Why? Because I think we had tried to respond with humanitarian assistance. That dries up. Development doesn't come quickly enough. They fall through the cracks. So many people are on the move, following where the humanitarian agencies are present, because this is where they can get some support inside Syria, humanitarian situation. I was there in April. It's pretty bad. I would say worsening. You've seen also unrest. But I think that also in this general decrease of humanitarian funding, this is now affecting also refugees in Lebanon or in Jordan. And you know, these countries have hosted enormous populations for a very long period of time. The earthquake was horrible. I mean, I've never seen such devastation, especially in the Turkish side. But it opened up the possibility of, the understanding that more humanitarian aid was needed, and was needed everywhere. So somehow there was a moment of overcoming the political difficulties. I flew here from Turkey yesterday. I was in Jordan 2 weeks earlier, and I heard these governments maintain a very good language on voluntariness of return. In Lebanon, it's more complex. We know because the Lebanese situation is more complicated and the presence of refugees is more problematic for them than maybe any other country. Sorry to say, but sometimes it takes this. It takes people arriving in rich countries to alert them to a crisis in a very poor country. If we don't work with the Taliban, we cannot work in Afghanistan, and then we cannot provide even the bare minimum support to that resilience. There's nothing else. The depressing thing is that we cannot say, okay, it's a phase and then we move into development. I don't see this happening anytime soon. So my plea is, please, please continue to support, because that's their only lifeline at the moment. There's nothing else. Besides all the discussions on Ukraine and other places, it proves the point that inclusion of refugees, access to services, to employment, to documentation, to freedom of movement is actually a much better way to respond, because it creates much more, it prevents much more clashes and divisions between communities.